Hello everybody and happy 2023 again. This is Mike Walsh. I'm the mayor for the town of East Hartford, like you didn't know that. And I'm broadcasting from 50 Chapman Place, which is our relocated town hall. I know you are, if you're a frequent listener to the program, you know that we've closed down town hall. It's due for an extensive makeover, about $21 million, and therefore all of the functions had to be moved slightly north to 50 Chapman Place. And we're here, and if you have any questions or concerns, by all means, call my office, 860-291-7201, and we'll be able to get the answer to your questions. If it's how to make a tax payment, where to drop your tax payment off, you need an appointment with the assessor. It's all here, so please, by all means, we continue using the lessons of COVID to try to deliver a high level of service. And if there's anything we can do to help, by all means, reach out. We have two questions today on Ask the Mayor. And again, if you've been a long-time listener, you know what Ask the Mayor is. It's a program we developed about a year ago, and it gives an opportunity for the residents to write their questions in. You can call them in, you can send them in by email, whatever the case may be. And then I take them, socialize them among the people that, the employees within Town Hall, so I get you the right information. And then I ultimately broadcast this on Wednesday via social media. So this is the second Ask the Mayor of 2023. I'm sure there'll be many more to come. And we have two questions. Submission number 183, since we started, comes from Karen. And the question is, now that there is a per trip charge for using the transfer station, why can't it be open more? So I took that as a two-part question. Remember, we moved to All American Waste. They handle our day-to-day curbside waste pickup, and then the town still runs the transfer station. So here's the email I provided Karen back on Thursday, January 19th. One, thank you for reaching out and asking a question. The transfer station is a valuable service provided to the community and costs the town of East Hartford about $500,000 to $700,000 per year. And those costs are divided among staffing, overtime, equipment, and fringe benefits. The hours of the station are monitored by Public Works, who is always looking to balance the cost of the service with the benefit to the public. And in this case, Marilyn Cruz-Aponte, who is our Public Works Director, received a copy of the question and the reply so that Marilyn can also look into it. Back to Karen. If we were to add another day to be open or extend the hours, we'd add something like $100,000 in annual cost to the town's budget. That cost would either add to our existing taxes if we moved, or if we moved the staffing around, we would trade workers who were perhaps filling potholes, cutting lawns, or otherwise doing other public works functions. So Karen, you can see it's a trade-off. While we reconfigured the way residents access the transfer station using tickets, there is no new stream of revenue, as we used to collect transfer station permit fees annually. So again, we've traded that $35 fee, $15 if you were a senior citizen, for basically a $10 per pass ticket and $5 if you were a senior. While the configuration of fees is different and is more closely borne by the heavy users of the transfer station, the amount collected by the town to access the transfer station does not cover the cost of the entire operation. So some people don't realize that. They figure the $10 per ticket covers costs. It does not. It covers a portion, but not all. Basically, the town collects roughly the same amount of revenue under the new configuration as the old configuration, and under the old or the new, doesn't pay everything, so the taxpayers subsidize some of it. So we'll continue to look at it with an eye on adding days. The service is not without cost to the taxpayer, and I hope I have answered Karen's question. Question number 2 and 3, actually 184, comes from Angela. And it's a two-part question. Question number 1 is, why doesn't East Hartford build affordable senior housing apartments instead of apartments that will perhaps bring children in a greater need or demand for the schools? And then the second part is, why are East Hartford taxes the 5th highest in Connecticut? And that second one, I want to underscore, is not accurate, and I want to provide you with the accurate information. So I also replied to this morning. Good morning, Angela. You posed two very good questions. The first on senior housing. The East Hartford Housing Authority is responsible for all senior housing in town. They have close to 1,000 units in about 8 different locations or complexes. And the 1,000 is my recollection. It could be a little bit less, could be a little bit more, and I believe 8 is the number of complexes, although it could have been a little bit less, a little bit more. That's 16% of our housing is dedicated to seniors or being affordable. That being said, East Hartford has more units than any of our surrounding towns. And again, I don't tell you that for any other reason, just so you can benchmark us to other communities. The East Hartford Housing Authority has been adding units annually through their scattered site program, but that's a few dozen new units, not hundreds. While there is federal support for more units, the town balances how much stock we have against how much more we need. So we add them, just not in huge bunches, and that decision and that planning process falls with the East Hartford Housing Authority, which is a different organization, not the town. That being said, as to the development of apartments, I do support them because we need to add new disposable income to the community to attract retail and restaurants. That is a sign of vibrancy, vitality, and growth, which we currently do not have in some areas of the town. We're getting better, but we're still not there. So the apartments plan, for instance, on Silver Lane, add disposable income, and while they may add some children to the school system, they will be marketed to professionals who need something close to Pratt, something close to Hartford. So we expect some children, but not an inordinate amount. And we've checked with the Board of Education. They can accommodate small numbers of new children throughout all schools without increasing the cost to deliver. So again, I hear what you're saying. We have existing options that you may or may not want to partake in. There's some growing options called scattered site. And then on the housing or the apartment issues, we are looking to attract other professionals to grow the community, to ultimately attract retail and restaurants, and that's for a sense of vibrancy. So the second question, and this is what I want to focus on. You've heard me, if you've listened to this program, a considerable amount of time explain this. The second question is, our taxes are the 5th highest in the state. That is categorically wrong. The town's mill rate may be the 5th highest, but when you apply the mill rate to the value of homes, and I'll focus on homes because I believe that's what we're talking about, we have the 117th highest taxes in the state. So there are 169 towns in East Hartford, in Connecticut, I'm sorry. East Hartford has the 117th, either highest or lowest taxes, whatever, however you want to say it. That's in the bottom third of taxation. Now there's 3 elements that you really have to take into account. We've only discussed 2 of them. Mill rate is the amount of money we need to apply to home ownership to arrive at what we raise in revenue. And that revenue is, or the statistic mill rate, is a meaningless statistic unless you understand that we have some of the lower values across the state. So even though some other towns have a lower mill rate, and I'll use Glastonbury for a second, they have a lower mill rate but significantly higher values. So their tax rate is 64% higher than East Hartford. So that's what you have to remember. So now you have mill rate, you have value, and of course the last thing is service. So this is the last thing I answered to Angela. You must couple the local real estate values with the mill rate and services to be a meaningful comparison. Now here's where I go into my, unfortunately, diatribe, which many of you have heard. On the value of services, East Hartford is at the top for services provided to residents like weekly curbside refuse collection, sidewalks, street lights, and door-to-door paramedic service. I intentionally chose those because Glastonbury, virtually across the town, does not have any of those. They don't have weekly curbside waste collection that is embedded in their taxes. They pay separately. They don't have sidewalks in many places. They don't have streetlights in many places, if not all places. And they do not have door-to-door paramedic service like East Hartford. So it's not an apples-to-apples comparison. But we have more services and our taxes are 64% lower. That's the takeaway. So that being said, Glastonbury charges a per capita tax rate of $4,391, placing them at 20th in terms of taxation of the 169 towns. East Hartford is at $2,670, and that places us at 117 with much higher service. So again, you can live in Glastonbury with fewer services and 64% higher taxes, or you can enjoy it here in East Hartford. There was a rather robust discussion on the social media site I Grew Up in East Hartford, and there was a purge going on the day before yesterday. That was Sunday, because as we're taping this, we're in the early part of the week. And people were tired of residents who have been around town in the 70s and 80s who moved to Florida or some other community and continue to participate in the forum only to denounce their old hometown. There was probably at least 100 comments that were positive to East Hartford. So on behalf of the town of East Hartford, on behalf of Mayor Mike, thank you to those people on that particular social media site, I Grew Up in East Hartford, for explaining to everybody what a wonderful town it is East Hartford is. I get two types of people in East Hartford. Generally speaking, if you're a little bit older and you've spent more than 20 years in town, and when I say a little bit older, let's say over 55, you are very dissatisfied with the taxes. However, if you're a new resident compared to where you came from, you generally think the services are marvelous and the taxes are on the lower side. So statistically, I gravitate toward those newer people coming into town because I watch the numbers carefully as the former finance director. So again, a shout out to those people on I Grew Up in East Hartford. This is your community. Keep the comments positive. I'm Mayor Mike. Happy 2023. We'll see you next week.